Last week, we broke down the two candidates battling for the future of New Zealand's Navy, Japan's Upgraded Mogami and the UK's Type 31. It looks like a dead hit on paper, and the debate in the comments prove it. But when you look past the spec sheets and look at the bigger picture, the winner is clear. Japan's Mogami is going to win this race. Why am I so certain? Let's get into it. First things first, let's summarize last week's discussion. New Zealand was considering Japan's Upgraded Mogami and the UK's Type 31 to replace its aging frigates TKH and Temana. The Upgraded Mogami is the enhanced evolution of the Mogami, which will be larger and more combat capable than the standard variant. Australian configuration will include Australian-specific requirements, including the NSM missiles, Mark 54 torpedoes, and ESSM missiles, and possibly Australian CMS and sensors in future builds as well. It's a high-tech frigate with a high degree of automation, making it possible to be manned with a crew as few as 60 sailors. However, this comes with heavy trade-offs. It's less redundant than comparable ships. The Mogami has neither a separate radio room, usually located directly behind the bridge, nor a damage control center, which is buried deep inside the ship in a spot least likely to be hit in combat. For Mogami, damage control and communications are run from the Combat Information Center or CIC. Furthermore, the ship doesn't have an emergency CIC as well, further reducing the need for personnel numbers. So, if the ship receives a major hit to the CIC, there's nothing left to do for the crew. And the most likely outcome of such a scenario is that the surviving crew will be heading for the life raft. No need to perform damage control and try to save the ship. It may be counterintuitive and can be deemed radical by traditional manning standard. But that's the only way to achieve crew efficiency in a country with declining manpower. Of course, I bet the Upgraded Mogami will be more resilient and redundant. In the opposite corner stands the UK's Type 31 frigate. Based on the Arrowhead 140 hull, the design features a plug-and-play architecture engineered for maximum adaptability. As seen with the UK's general-purpose setup, Indonesia's VLS heavy build, and Poland's strike-focus configuration. To meet modern standard, the Type 31 has been reworked from its parent design, the Danish Ivar Huitfeldt class, introducing enhanced survivability, deeper system redundancy, and damage resilience far beyond older Royal Navy ships like the Type 23 and Type 45. The Type 31 dimension is slightly shorter than the Upgraded Mogami, but it has a much wider beam for extra stability. It uses the Kodak engine configuration instead of the Kodak configuration, making it more cost-effective to operate than the Mogami. Unlike the Mogami, the Type 31 will have Bofors 57 and 40mm combo, but will still pack the same 32-cell Mark 41 VLS. The UK government ordered 5 Type 31 with a fixed price of £250 million per ship. But that was a price tag from a decade ago. Since then, rampant inflation and supply chain chaos have pushed global defense costs skyward. And to save some upfront costs, the Type 31 is set to receive the NSM missiles recycled from the Type 23 frigates when they are retired. To maximize crew efficiency, the Type 31 also incorporates a high degree of automation, particularly across its propulsion, damage control, and weapon systems. Although it cannot run on a skeletal crew like the Mogami, its 100% complement is still remarkably low for a ship of this size. If we are just comparing raw specs and baseline capabilities, both designs deserve to win in New Zealand. But in modern defense procurement, a spec sheet is never the deciding factor. We have to look at the big picture, threat assessment, regional alliances, and geopolitics. And looking at those factors, the choice becomes crystal clear. The Upgraded Mogami is absolutely going to win this race. Why? I mentioned it briefly last week that New Zealand's safe isolation is gone. Distance is no longer protection, not when ships with enormous striking power come into New Zealand's backyard. The Chinese Navy has rapidly expanded its blue water footprint directly into the South Pacific and the Tasman Sea. They have demonstrated what they can do last year, rattling New Zealand profoundly. And who else sees China as a real threat? Australia and Japan. While the UK's Type 31 is an excellent general-purpose patroller, the Mogami is specifically designed to counter Chinese naval projection in the Pacific. Second is geographic proximity and sustained regional deterrence. Australia is still New Zealand's closest ally both in bilateral relationships and geography, while Japan is right on the doorstep of the Indo-Pacific theater. Since Australia has already chosen the Mogami, the supply chains, technical expertise, and engineering support for the Mogami flow natively through the Tokyo-Canberra pipeline. Choosing the Type 31 would mean New Zealand is relying on a European nation half the world away for its primary naval combat infrastructure, a massive logistical bottleneck during a major regional crisis. And finally, the deciding factor in this race isn't the ship itself, it's who New Zealand sails with. Australia and New Zealand recently locked in their ANZAC 2035 vision, a deep bilateral roadmap aimed at turning their independent militaries into an interchangeable unified force. This roadmap aims to ensure both nations can fight or respond to crises as one unit, emphasizing embedded staff at each other's strategic and operational levels. At its core, the roadmap pushes for several aspects, including common procurement and shared logistics. Australia and New Zealand are required to buy complementary or identical equipment, platforms, and weapon systems across maritime, air, land, and autonomous domains to make logistics seamless. Furthermore, both nations are obliged to co-sustain massive shared hardware platforms such as the C-130, the P-8, and expectedly their future warships, which allows both forces to lean on each other for maintenance and redundancy. Because Australia has already selected the upgraded Mogami, New Zealand choosing the same platform is a strategic no-brainer. New Zealand's personnel can man Australian warships, access Australian supply chains, training facilities, spare part, maintenance hub, and vice versa. If New Zealand went with the Type 31, it would defeat the purpose of this mandate, break the Trans-Tasman commonality, and drive up its own isolated sustainment costs. Selecting the Mogami is a modern rebirth of the original ANZAC frigate project. In short, the UK's Type 31 is a fantastic ship for a global navy, but New Zealand doesn't fight a global game. Geopolitics have brought the threat right to the Tasman Sea, New Zealand's backyard. So, to survive in the Indo-Pacific, Wellington has to buy an Indo-Pacific solution. And that means joining the Australia-Japan Mogami bloc. So what do you think of my Mogami prediction for the Royal New Zealand Navy? Do you agree or do you think the Type 31 still has a fighting chance? Share with us in the comment section below. Of course, I would like to be proven wrong since I like the arrowhead design too. I'm just hoping that New Zealand gets the best for its needs. Thank you for watching everyone. I'll see you in the next one.